Welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you think supply chain logistics is just, moving boxes from point A to point B, you're going to want to strap in for this one. Today, we are unpacking a literal masterclass in digital infrastructure. Think of it as a digital shield against geopolitical chaos. We're setting the scene right in the crosshairs of the 2026 North American trade coalition. Aggressive border tariffs are basically rewriting the rules of logistics overnight. And right alongside that, a massive geological wall we're about to hit, the 2034 Ontario landfill capacity cliff. We are literally running out of space, and the economic walls are closing in fast. Okay, let's dive into this, because this is where the story gets absolutely fascinating. How exactly does AI turn a toxic waste crisis into carbon gold? We're looking at a highly sophisticated software nexus that doesn't just manage logistics, it actively solves an existential geopolitical problem. We're going to see how edge AI and autonomous orchestration can stare down a dumpster full of chaotic construction debris, mathematically isolate the toxic liabilities, and literally transform the leftover clean wood into high-margin, tariff-exempt biocarbon assets. It's wild. So here's our roadmap for today. First, the high-stakes waste crisis. Second, the orchestration nexus at agent905wood.com. Third, we'll map the 9 subdomains. Fourth, we'll look at the 12-stage TCLP chain. And finally, carbon gold and compliance. All right, part 1, the high-stakes waste crisis, a true geopolitical pressure cooker. To really get why this software even exists, you gotta look at the pressure cooker of early 2026. Ontario had this blue box collapse, basically ending commercial paper recycling under new laws, and it created an immediate routing nightmare. Throw in the U.S. slapping these massive 50% Section 338 tariffs on finished Canadian wood. Suddenly, just moving materials became a total financial minefield. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of the fallout. You've got a domestic tipping fee floor of $189.86 per ton in the Greater Toronto area. Contrast that with a microscopic 36 cents per ton down in Michigan. When the economic arbitrage is that absurd, shipping 3.46 million tons of trash across the border to Michigan every single year isn't just business, it's a basic survival tactic. The border pipe literally has to stay open, but the rules of the game have completely changed. So traditionally, managing all this flow meant relying on human classifiers. But humans get tired, right? They experience operational fatigue, they cost around 65 to 80 grand a year, plus benefits. And honestly, when they're exhausted, dangerous materials slip through. That risks massive international border seizures. But contrast that with the 95 Wood Compliance Gate. It's essentially a $999 Pixel 10 Pro running local Edge AI models. It's running 24/7, zero operational fatigue, and it drops the marginal cost of classification to basically zero. Plus, it gives you a fully court-admissible digital audit trail. And let me tell you, that audit trail is the absolute key to surviving these new border rules. Moving on to Section 2, Orchestration Nexus, the centralized brain of the whole operation. You see, you can't just slap smartphones on job sites and hope for the best. You need a centralized nervous system to manage this massive data flow. Your agent.905wood.com subdomain is the orchestration nexus that triggers all 9 automations across the platform. It's the central brain. It maintains a unified, real-time digital twin load ledger for every single shipment. By tapping into Google Gemini Vertex AI pipelines and using AlloDB for state persistence, it guarantees what we call explainable compliance. And it does this without needing a single human to intervene. Every single decision is logged, verified, and totally ready for any regulatory review. And to make absolutely sure this central brain operates within strict legal bounds, the AlloDB instance is hosted specifically up in the Montreal region. This is absolutely crucial because it strictly enforces Canadian PIPED privacy laws, all while managing the platform's distributed limbs, the intake scanning, the logistics routing, the financial billing. It's just this beautifully secure, closed-loop system. Which brings us to Section 3, mapping the 9 subdomains. Let's look at the anatomy of this digital nervous system. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the deep research into workflow skills requirements for all the workflow processes. This entire setup is based on a workbook that maps platform skills, custom skills, workflow chains, and scheduled automations against every single subdomain across these specific operational layers. Everything is synced seamlessly by Vertex AI. You've got the RFQ layer locking in contract rates, the intake layer running speculative AI inference right on the edge hardware, the transport layer parsing complex EDI data to dispatch those massive 144-yard walking floor mothership trucks, and the regulatory layers setting specific Ontario environmental laws. All of this is triggered and kept in perfect harmony by the Agent Nexus. Looking at the remaining 4 subdomains, this is really where the value realization happens. We have decoupled billing, handled via Stripe, reporting that generates those USMCA origin shields, and scientific validation over at the lab layer. But tying this all back to that skills mapping we just talked about, I really want to point out the disposal construction platform interface. This is where a vital custom skill lives, the Circle Levy Calculator submodule. It's a real game changer because it instantly generates the crucial circle avoidance summary report for general contractors, letting them see their exact tax savings right then and there.
All right, Section 4, the 12-stage TCLP chain. We are talking sub-500 millisecond real-time quarantine processing here.
So this TCLP hazardous isolation chain, it is without a doubt the most complex workflow on the entire platform. It actually touches all subdomains across all layers in a crazy 12-stage branching workflow. And it does all this in under 500 milliseconds to massively stress test every single load of wood. So the crucial point is this. Clean wood is incredibly valuable, but contaminated wood, that's a massive liability. TCLP stands for Strict Statutory Limits codified in Ontario Regulation 347. If heavy metals like arsenic, lead, or chromium are detected, boom, the load has to be isolated immediately, way before it causes biocarbon contamination at the refinery, or worst case scenario, triggers an international border seizure. Let's break down how the Nexus actually orchestrates these initial edge inference stages. It all kicks off with the Pixel 10 Pro capturing multimodal frames. Primary inference runs instantly right there on the device's edge TPU. Now, if the model is sitting at about 70 to 85% confident, what they call the amber band, it suspects that weathered wood might actually be hiding chemical preservatives. It doesn't just guess, it instantly escalates those frames to the massive 4.5 billion parameter Gemma 4 E4B model. This acts as a visual fallacy guard, basically double-checking to ensure the AI isn't just being tricked by shadows, a bit of dirt, or weathering. Let's move to the next steps and see how this builds, because what happens if those AI models just can't agree? Well, the system actually flags the physical load for real spectroscopic analysis using near-infrared and X-ray sensors. It literally grounds the digital software in physical reality. That sensing data gets ingested right back into the central agent Nexus, which then adjudicates the findings against those super strict TCLP thresholds. It's actively hunting for things like arsenic levels creeping over 2.5 milligrams per liter. And if a threshold is breached, the orchestration Nexus immediately triggers the auto-reject branch and generates a hazardous waste manifest. Then comes the physical seal. The driver literally holds a button on the Pixel screen for 2 seconds. This physical action triggers the Titan M2 hardware chip, which seals a tamper-evident cryptographic envelope. Boom. The system automatically revokes the USMCA border shield and writes the entire forensic log straight to the Montreal Alloy DB ledger. The contamination is locked down instantly and undeniably. Finally, Section 5, Carbon Gold and Compliance. Let's talk about the massive financial payoffs of all this orchestration. Let's bring it back down to earth for a second and look at what solving this giant regulatory puzzle actually yields in cold, hard cash. I mean, imagine saving over $1,000 just by verifying exactly what is in your truck. By stopping these massive 144-yard mothership trucks from causing international border incidents, the system yields immediate provincial tax savings. Listen to this. Unverified mixed waste gets slapped with a $60 per ton levy, but AI-verified clean wood, just $5 a ton. So on a single mothership truck, you're looking at an immediate $1,053 in Circle levy savings per load. That is a game changer for operational costs. But hold on, because the real prize here is the carbon refinement. That clean, verified wood, it yields up to $7,660 Canadian in premium carbon dividends per single load. And because of the platform's clever decoupled billing architecture at the billing subdomain, the refinery gets to retain a staggering 100% margin on those carbon dividends. That massive value spread is literally what funds the deployment of this Tier 1 Edge AI hardware across their entire fleet. The system pays for itself. It just completely flips how we think about waste and supply chains on its head. By using a central orchestration nexus to enforce this explainable compliance, the platform takes physical chaos and turns it into a highly bankable strategic asset. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative question. As global supply chains face more and more friction, will autonomous orchestration and edge AI become the ultimate weapons in surviving global trade wars? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I'll catch you next time.